King Crimson were a progressive rock band from England. They started in 1968, and many people claim that they actually kicked off the whole progressive rock thing with their first album called In the Course of the Crimson King. To say that they've been influential in prog rock is a bit of an understatement. They've been active in short bursts over the years in various lineups. Guitarist Robert Fripp has been the central driving force for from somewhere in the early 70s. And they've constantly reinvented themselves over the years and pushed the boundaries of music in interesting and challenging ways. Also, occasionally challenging the concept of what it means to be a band. So, for a while, they were a loose collaboration of subgroups called projects. For a while, they had a three-drum kit front line. Um, and yeah, they did all sorts of interesting things. So while you can definitely hear the influence of other bands and of particular genres and musical styles in their music, they have always been leaders rather than followers. They're one of the most progressive of progressive rock bands. They have released, I believe, 13 studio albums. They are currently thought to be at an end and are no more, but it's not entirely clear whether that's going to be true forever. Hi, my name is Dan. So this was the fifth studio album by King Crimson. It's not my first encounter with this album, but it's not one that I know well. There are particularly one track, the Larks and Aspic Part 2, I feel I know fairly well, but mostly not hugely embedded in me. I will confess that I am a King Crimson fan, and there are some other albums of theirs that I know very well and really, really enjoy. So this was, for context, a transitional album. They were going through another reinvention. This is the point where Robert Fripp pretty much takes over from Peter Sinfield, who was effectively leading the band before this. And we are the kind of history of who's in King Crimson at any point in time is quite confusing. We are here. Robert Fripp, who was now basically taking control on guitar and other things. John Wetton on bass and vocals and other things. He has come through from the band Family. After his stint in King Crimson, he played in Roxy Music, Uriah Heep, UK, Wishbone Ash, was a founding member of Asia, and also did the project Icon, sometimes known as Wet and Downs. We've got Bill Bruford on drums, having left Yes, because he thought he'd done everything he could for Yes, and liked the fact that King Crimson were going to a darker place than Yes were. We've got David Croft on violin and all sorts of other things, and a guy called Jamie Muir on percussion, and other things. And by other things, I mean all sorts of percussive things that he uses here, including found objects and anything that he found that made an interesting sound. Apparently, he hung it up and hit it. So I've got two problems with doing this review. First, as I've already declared, I'm quite a fan of King Crimson, so I'm going to find it hard to decontextualize this. What I try and do with these reviews is to review them as a standalone listening experience. And it's hard for me to jump out of where is it contextually in the rest of King Crimson stuff? How does it feed into what comes after, particularly? So I'm going to try and do that. The other one is it's hard because it's really varied. So it's actually quite hard to describe, certainly in try and keep it relatively short as I try with these reviews. So we've got three tracks that are songs. We've got three tracks that are instrumentals. Musically, it's quite unusual. Some of it is improvised passages. There was definitely kind of not really jazz improvisation, though. It was, I don't really know what you could call it, avant-garde improvisation, I guess. There are some odd guitar sounds in here, which are quite a focus, and a lot of that is down to Robert Fripp, and the processing he had on his guitars was quite unusual, certainly for the time. There's some bits of keyboards, and yeah, and I'll come back to the instruments. There's some odd keys. That's the note that I've got, which didn't mean keyboards. It means the kind of the scales that are being used. My daughter was listening to one bit. And she said, "Oh, I quite like Arabic music," and some of it's got that feel, but some of it's got all sorts of other kind of tonality feels. Um, there's some odd rhythms and there's polyrhythms and complex stuff going on here. Back to the sounds, right? So mellotron, band, obviously drums, bass, etc. Lots of violin, and as I said, these odd guitar sounds going on. So it varies from very mellow to quite a classical feel to it to very harsh. So like mentioned before, Larks Tongues in Aspic Part 2 is harsh. It's got really kind of raucous guitar sounds to it. Some of the stuff that I've read kind of suggests that it's been influential on heavy metal. I wouldn't describe it myself as heavy metal, but that's probably because I don't think of King Crimson as a whole as being that. Maybe it could be thought of as that. It's got a musical structure that I don't understand, but I do feel right. It sets the pattern for a whole load of Crimson stuff to come. So I am gonna dip into the context here. Sorry about that, but I do feel that I can hear in this album the seeds of a whole load of the kind of King Crimson of the next 10 years. I can hear the start of some of the musical directions, but there's a lot of them, a lot of different variety of stuff going on here. It's complex, it's clever, sometimes it's challenging, some of it is not an easy listen, I would say. It's bonkers, it's talented, and it's experimental. So it is odd, it's weird, it is a kind of comfort zone weird for me, because this is where I've approached weird music from, is through progressive rock, and King Crimson is definitely one of my go-to for this. It's not my favourite of their albums, but it's still pretty good. So I enjoyed this. I was pleased to see it coming up, and I had a good time listening to it. So that's what I think. As always, I'd love to ask what you think of this album. So please do let me know by leaving a comment down there in the comments box. And that's it from me for now.